Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, Santosh.
Hey Alexei, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I mean, it's a weekend, so I just went for shopping yesterday, and I was tired most of the day,
Ah.
and now I'm recovered.
Yeah, about myself, I was having tennis training yesterday. I just started, and it gives a lot of energy back. So yeah, I'm also feel much more energized on weekends myself. Okay, awesome. Yeah, for people who just joined us or maybe see us first time on YouTube, or maybe not even first time, we didn't appear for some time in our channel. So that's first in I think few months appearance. And we is a I'm talking about XTechnology team is a yeah we have a website, by the way. This is our website. Um, yeah, it's very a simple one, but yeah, just a clear, just a little bit of what we do. We try to yeah explore different technologies to do it with different people from community. Sometimes coding, mostly coding actually, and doing it live together. And sometimes we have a side talks. Sometimes we invite other people, and that's actually the occasion for today. So today we have a guest in our stream, and that's Santosh. It's yeah, he's a lot of he plays a lot of roles. Let's say. I yeah, he's a GitHub star. He's an Angular star. He's a Twitter star. Yeah, a lot of stars there. A public speaker, Google expert. Yeah, I will ask Santosh to introduce himself in a minute, of course. But it's really nice to have you on the stream. So you know, it's a pleasure to have you, man. We met a few months back on a conference in Portugal. It is a Epic conference. It was really a great attendance there. So it was nice to meet you again, and it's nice to meet you today. And today we're gonna, yeah, talk mostly about Angular. I hope we can uncover some of the high-level, yeah, concepts around Angular development, Angular framework, comparison it to other modern front-end tools. Maybe speaking about a little bit open source, and see if yeah how the normal developer can start contributing to the Angular ecosystem. For example, just an example. um, so hi Santosh, how is it
Hey,
going
hey
again?
Alex, I'm good. I'm good. I mean, thanks a lot for the invitation. I know. I remember. I just posted it on LinkedIn that I'm like looking for some opportunities to appear on some podcast, and you just were nice enough to actually invite me. So
It took
thanks a
me
lot.
10 minutes.
Yeah, yeah, actually. So thanks a lot for doing that. Yeah, and I'm really excited. I mean, I haven't. I think yeah, last time I spoke about Angular was in January, and that was a meetup in Berlin. So yeah, good to be back talking about Angular.
Okay, okay, but usually Angular is your ecosystem, right? It's something that you deal with a lot.
I work like as a full-time developer. Like mostly, like I don't get to code a lot in Angular because it's my team actually owns platform, so we mostly like try to support them by improving the infrastructure, not the infrastructure
Mhm.
in terms of your backend, but yeah, in front end, right? So we have our monorepo, we have more than yeah, the 300, 400 developers contributing to that monorepo. So we have to make sure that everything is going great. We have
Mhm.
our code structure is properly managed. We are able to actually make the health of code even much better. So those are things. So I generally don't get that much time, but I mean, I actually work on NX, which is another
Yeah.
tool. If you remember, that was the talk I gave at okay. Uh,
Yeah.
so my work mostly revolves around NX at work, but helping Angular developers, that's also part of our uh, daily job. So in case there are some developers
Mhm.
who need some help related to Angular, that's where my team jumps in as well.
Nice, nice. Yeah, actually, maybe we should have started with yeah, talking a little bit ourselves, and maybe you can start introducing yourself because we already dived into some Angular contribution. But yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, apart from that, of course, I'm an Angular GD, GitHub star. I'm also an ex champion. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, we also do podcast called Tech Talks. So,
Hmm.
which is, of course, we already released like episode 4 recently.
Hmm.
I mean, it's yeah, good, getting good traction from the community. So it's not about just Angular. I mean, it's about just any technology. We did React. We did. Uh,
Hmm.
I think we also did SolidJS, which was with Carniato, who's like creator of SolidJS, and that episode already has like 4,000 views. So yeah, happy
Hmm.
about like how it's going in season 3 because we already did season 1 and season 2 before,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then I mean, good news, we are also doing a virtual conference. So as part of this is learning, we are doing our first virtual conference, which will happen in 16th and 17th May. So
Hmm.
we would love to have a CFP talk from you as well. I'll share the CFP, and you can actually probably just add this in description as well, video description later. So if more people are
Hmm.
interested to join or apply for talks, I mean, feel free to do it. I mean, our motto is actually encouraging new developers and make sure like more people are getting involved into the community, and
Hmm.
that's our motto. So it's feel free to apply even if you have never spoken at a conference.
Nice, nice. Okay, yeah, today I think it's gonna be about like just a conversation, right? And maybe I'll ask some annoying questions. So yeah, that's about it. I was wondering, like, first about your background. Like, were you always doing the front end in your career? Was it like, yeah, main passion of yours?
No, actually, I started with the .NET and I was doing Windows development. So for a few years, I did Windows development, and then I landed up at a startup where we had so many things to do. I mean, they were like literally short of people. I mean, there were people, but no one wants to take that lead, right?
Hmm.
So I started doing some of the ASP.NET work. You remember ASP.NET Forms?
Yeah, yeah.
I think everyone did that back in days. So
Hmm.
uh, from Windows Forms, I started doing the ASP.NET, where of course there was a little bit of UI, but still familiar,
Hmm.
right? You can just drag drop controls and you are good to go.
Yeah.
And I realized that Windows development was much easier, but it's okay. I mean, web is
Hmm.
complicated. You have
Hmm.
too many
Hmm.
things. So I started doing that, and then dropped that for some time. I started doing APIs. So I started writing the REST APIs for my company.
Yeah.
Even I did some WCF, WPF, no WPF, yeah WCF, Windows Communication Foundation. That's what it was called. And
Mhm.
then for a few
It's
years,
also
then
Microsoft technology or not?
it was all about Microsoft. I mean, we were actually Microsoft. All the products we had was actually Microsoft.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
I started doing that. I did it for a few years, then started leading the team, of course. Then uh, more teams actually came under me. So I was doing support, production support. I was doing our DPAs, improving our backend queries and everything. So all the teams were reporting to
mhm,
me. And then I got bored.
mhm.
So I was like, okay, this is not what I want to do. I want to write code. And then I ended up switching my job, went again to the IC role, where actually I was doing backend, which was ASP.NET, ASP.NET MVC APIs, and
Uh-huh.
then it was AngularJS.
Mhm,
So I started like doing some of the actual backend. I would say ASP.NET was still still front end, but not everything was front end, right? And it was server side
mhm,
render,
mhm.
and we are back to the same era where we are trying to do server side rendering again. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's something we can talk about later. But yeah, I mean, I started doing AngularJS, and then uh, I just heard like, okay, there is a new framework coming which is called Angular. I was like confused why. I mean,
Yeah,
there is
yeah.
an AngularJS,
Mhm.
and then they named it Angular. I was like, why? I mean, this is but
Was it around 2015? Something
exactly.
around that? Yeah.
So
Mhm.
2014 they announced they will do it. 2015, I think this 2016 was the year where they launched 2.0.
Mhm,
So
mhm,
2.0 came in, then 2017 was the year I started actually, when they launched 4.0, Angular 4.0. And then I
mhm,
actually played a little bit of, with Angular And I really like TypeScript because, of course, I had written a little bit of AngularJS and
Mm-hmm.
it was main, and I had written jQuery as well because back in the days when we had ASP.NET MVC, just
Mm-hmm.
for front. I mean, the stack was jQuery for like writing your interaction with a web. Then you had MVC API, like to render your server side forms, right?
Yeah.
And jQuery was, of course, a lot of pain because
Mm-hmm.
you do a lot of logic and
It's
you're
still a lot of pain.
if you're writing one. So, and on top of it, that was the era where you had to support i6. So, whoa, that was pain. So, glad we don't have i6, even i11. So, and then
Mm-hmm.
I started doing, started learning about Angular. Like, okay, this looks good because I'm able to use TypeScript, which is type safe.
Yeah.
And I had my most of my background from a type safe language, right? I mean, I was doing .NET, so I
Mm-hmm.
felt like home. I was like, oh, this is nice. And then
Mm-hmm.
I started teaching it actually. And like I was still working with AngularJS and ASP.NET, but I started teaching it because, of course, I needed
Mm-hmm.
money. So I started teaching it, and then eventually I got a job uh,
Mm-hmm.
at, at a bank in Pune. And
Mm-hmm.
I started doing like full time front end. Then I was like, okay, now no more .NET, no more any backend technologies. Then I picked up
Mm-hmm.
just Node.js to learn like how like you can do backend in JavaScript or TypeScript.
Front
So
end. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I
Mm-hmm.
did that as well, like just for teaching purpose. But that's how I started. I mean, that's in 2017. I was like full time doing Angular.
Nice, nice. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like I myself, I think I finished around that with front end. So it's like you changed my position, I guess. Yeah, I also actually finished with Angular JS to Angular migration. Like for me, it was almost the same. Like 2015 was the time I was working with the Angular JS, and then we actually moved our product to Angular, and indeed we had to replace everything, basically rewrite everything. However, the same name, same ownership, but yeah, apparently we had to do that. And also, indeed, the TypeScript change that was huge compared to JavaScript. So yeah, pretty much feel that experience as well. And I guess indeed, like you mentioned, yeah, the TypeScript it's so natural feeling to the type C sharp, right? It's almost the same. Yeah, it's awesome, I guess. One question about AngularJS. Do you still like? Do you remember this ecosystem? Did you like AngularJS actually?
That was my first time doing like some of the front end, but it was not a great developer experience if I try to compare it now, right? I mean, if like in last 7 years, if you see, or 8 years,
Mhm.
the technology has improved a lot. I mean, primary focus of any framework is actually developer experience. That was
Mhm.
not true 8 years ago. That was not. I mean, even when AngularJS or React came in, developer experience is something no one thought about. They were like, okay, we want to just deliver something which can be used by developers, and that's it,
Yeah.
right? So now, if I see, yeah, of course, the developer experience was lacking a lot,
Mhm.
but it was still like serving the purpose. It was still like making development a little bit easier as compared if I compare it with vanilla JS or if I
Mhm.
compare it with jQuery, right?
Mhm.
It's still
Mhm.
better.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, they had a lot of things from the box already, right? Like there was a dependency injection tool from the box. Was yeah, what else? Dependency
Components.
injection. Hmm.
Then they had components. They had concept of modules. They had
Yeah.
directives.
Hmm.
Yeah, so many things they had like
Yeah.
to make. Like, if I have to do that same thing in jQuery, it was a lot of pain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And templating from the box. Yeah, yeah. All of that. Um, what was really fascinating and still fascinating for me in AngularJS is the concept of scopes that actually live through the whole application, and that's all in combination with the JavaScript prototypes. That is still like blowing my mind. Like, yeah, how you make it work, and
Yeah,
it
true.
actually worked really nice. However, I didn't like this, the dirty check-in for the changes check-in, or however this mechanism was called. But I
Exactly.
mean, yeah, the rest was quite good.
Yeah.
Uh, Yeah, and also one cool thing about AngularJS, I think at the time was that they started already in 2009, I think. So it
Yeah.
was
So it was like one of the first framework which came out.
Yeah, there was there was some existing at the same time, right? There was Dojo, I think. There was XGS at least. Yeah, but yeah, that was the biggest, one of the
Yeah.
biggest ones. Yeah. Yeah, so then we came to Angular. That changed everything for you, at least, I guess.
That's true.
Yeah, and how did you did you follow other frameworks at that time? Like React appeared in the same pretty much time, and Vue.js almost the same time. Yeah.
As I was doing AngularJS, I never thought about like doing something else. I mean, I remember like reading a little bit of React, and it actually seemed complicated to me because I was, of
Mhm,
course, maybe I was coming from AngularJS background where we had DI, we had concept of components. I mean,
mhm,
of course, React also has component, but JSX feels a little bit weird to me still. I mean, I'm
mhm,
not a big fan of doing JSX. And when
mhm,
I Angular, it was like, oh, like nice. I mean, we have a file where we can define like HTML. I mean, of course, we have a TypeScript file where we can write our backend code, like or your backend in terms of your code for which
mhm,
gets converted to JavaScript, right? So
mhm.
that was like a selling point for me. So I was like, okay, this is the framework I want to choose now
Mhm.
because I mean, of course, this is what I recommend everyone. Try the framework, multiple frameworks, and see which
Yeah.
feels like more comfortable to you, rather
Mhm.
than listening to me and going to try Angular. Just try like few of them and see which is feels better, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Angular was one framework which I felt better. I mean, I felt like okay, this is something which I'm comfortable with, and this is what I'm going to do.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, I was wondering, can we maybe define some good parts and maybe bad parts of Angular? Also comparing to other frameworks. You know, this was a question back to 2018, maybe 17. Was a JavaScript fatigue very huge topic at that time? And yeah, because of all the technologies spreading around, and I think it still goes on, by the way. But like, if you compare still like these big frameworks to each other, yeah, in your path, of course, it's very natural. I think you described it in a very that for you it was very logical to choose one over the other. But if and yeah, of course, also to try different things, it's very good advice for newcomers. But how would you say from a expert level, like what would you choose in certain situations?
I mean, it really depends. I mean, for example, Angular was not SSR first for a long time.
Hmm.
So if you see like the framework like Next.js or Nuxt, right? I mean, they are popular because you are
Hmm.
able to do server-side rendering with ease. I mean, you
Hmm.
just like set up, do some extra setup to make it work. That's where
Hmm.
left Angular actually left for a long time. I mean, they had something called Angular Universal, but
Hmm.
packages they were using were outdated and they were struggling with hydration support. So many things, right? I mean, even the SEO was not that good. But
Hmm.
now Angular also have Angular is also becoming SSR first framework. So if you
Hmm.
start a project using Angular 17, that's
Hmm.
something where you can choose. Like if you want to start with SSR, they have an like uh, they're using Express right now, but you can
Hmm.
actually literally change it or replace it with anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from
Yeah.
logically, like all the frameworks are doing same thing, right? They are trying to say solve the same issue. I mean,
Mhm.
uh, if you see React, why people used to choose React because of course
Mhm.
that's where you have faster development, right? I mean, but once it becomes a very big project, you might have heard horrible stories about React as well. But if you
Yeah.
see like if you see Angular, I mean, of course, that's something which people use at large scale or large scale enterprises. I mean, even our project has like more than 800K lines of code. Actually, not.
Mhm.
We have a very big project. We have 25 applications, more than 100 libraries, and I have heard so many other people or other companies. I mean, I remember talking to one of my friends in Lithuania, and he was working for a large bank in EU, and they have like close to 1,000 libraries. So
Mhm.
that's very large scale, right? I'm not talking about small startups where you just have one application. I'm talking about a bank where you have probably hundreds and more than 100 applications
Hmm.
running, and they are all using Angular.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
also one selling point, or one more thing which I can add is like for enterprises, I mean, SSR is not a requirement at all, right? I mean, if you see most of the enterprise applications, they're not SSR first. I mean, they just want it to work within the organization, right? They just want that app to be like a good, it is some information and that's all. They
Yeah.
want faster development because once remember the faster development differs between startup and enterprises. For startups, it's like okay, adding new features because that's a small app, right? I mean,
Hmm.
okay, it's adding a new screen. But for enterprises, faster development means I have already have
Hmm.
hundreds of developer working on that project,
Yeah.
and my new developer joins and should be able to ship feature faster. That's the faster development for them. So
Hmm.
that's where actually Angular really shines. I mean, one thing is, of course, if you go to any new project, if you join any new company, the
Yeah.
code base which you are going to see in Angular is similar.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
and you might have heard these stories from a lot of people on maybe social media that when they join a new project, if that's a React project, they differ. They differ a lot
Hmm.
because people follow this practice here, different practice here, and
Exactly.
that's not
Different library. Yeah. Yeah.
so
Hmm.
that's not the case with Angular. I don't have that much experience with Who, but I have never seen anyone talking bad about Who. I'm not sure why, but uh, yeah. So I cannot like say anything in terms of Who, but this is what I've heard between React and Angular.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, nice indeed. I have the same feeling actually. Like it's cool because it gives some protocols, some guidance on how to
Yeah.
use it, how to work on it in the big teams. I totally agree with that. I don't know, like in my experience. So first of all, an issue like the one that I experienced exactly. Like we had the Angular JS. In our company. And yeah, it was easy for developers to follow all the rules to make it very very generic to the company. But then then you have a vendor lock, right? And if a version changes drastically like it was the case, so we had to rewrite everything. And that's of course the problem you have if you stick to one technology. Yeah, I mean, it's fair problem to just to keep it in mind. The company that I worked afterwards, they have chosen a different way. They decided not to stick to a particular framework. They decided to stick with the specifications and the standards, the front-end standards, talking about web standards, and things like web applications. You know the Polymer framework that was also like also from Google, based on the web components, right? And yeah, that was an idea. I think of big corporations you saw, like Microsoft, like Google. They actually decided to build their products on top of the web components at that time. So yeah, at least they didn't have a vendor lock. But was it the truth? I don't know. I think it was also like a sort of a vendor lock. Still, it is. Yeah, but again, fair point. Like Angular gives you really right directions, how you contribute to the source code, what you get out of it. That is a very good prediction. Like in your opinion, what is the rate? How popular is Angular as a choice for the companies?
So if you go to enterprises, most enterprises actually choose Angular, of course, for the reason we just mentioned. And I mean, most of the startups which I have seen goes with React. Of course, there is a reason behind it. It's easy to get an Angular a
Mhm,
React.js developer as compared to Angular. That's something which I have heard from everyone that okay, it's hiring, and I have seen that actually because when I was in India, I was hiring for Deutsche Bank where I used to work, and it was hard to get good Angular developer. I mean, it was of course still early. I mean, 2018, but it was
mhm,
hard because we had to actually mostly compromise because we had some level of expectation that okay, these are the things which we need if I
mhm,
want to have someone in my team. Because
mhm,
one thing which I expect is of course if I have to hire someone who knows less than me, and I'm not doing a good job. I mean,
Mhm.
if I had someone who knows more than me, that's win-win for both of us, right? I mean, I'm also going to learn something new,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah.
person also like gets to show his
Mhm.
skills at work, or his or her skills at work.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that was my expectation, but then we had to actually lower that expectation. We said, okay, let's compromise. Let's come in
Mhm.
between and see like if we can get this much. And that's not the
Mhm.
case with React, right? I mean, if you see like most people, like most influencers, Twitter influencers, they like to talk about React JS, right? And of course,
Mhm.
one of the most popular framework by big margin, I think. But Angular is, yeah, Angular is coming up. I mean, if you see last past year's data, actually Angular is actually rising as well. Uh,
Mhm.
most of the that's also a thing, right? I mean, most of the this what you could say surface actually you see they are mostly, I would say, yeah, they are mostly focused on React. I mean, this is something which I've seen. I mean, they like to just talk about React, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah. I just opened the State of JS website just to, yeah, wonder what is right there. It seems that Angular is yeah, is somewhere,
What it
mm,
would be. I mean,
yeah,
this is,
somewhere in the middle. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So, and if you see all this survey, this is not actually people who are working in the industry.
yeah.
I mean, if you just notice the data, right? I mean, probably this is like probably, let's say, I saw the Stack Overflow data, which was 84,000
Mhm.
developers last year. And if you see the total number of developers, it's actually in millions, right? So we
Mhm.
don't like, it's like subset of the data, and
Mhm.
mostly actually people who are active on social media.
Mhm. Mhm.
There are a lot of developers who are working in industry and they never care about this all this stats or all this surveys,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's one of the down, I would say, disadvantage, I would say, right?
Mhm.
In terms of
Mhm.
see all this data and then you try to figure out next better framework for your organization. That's not the case. I mean,
Mhm.
I mean, if I have to choose like a framework for my organization, of course, I will go with something which is very solid. I mean, which is something which I can probably use for next 5 6 years without any issues. And this is
Mhm.
where like Angular as well. I mean, I'll give you a reason why. So
Mhm.
you have so many frameworks, right? I mean, of course, you have React, you have Vue, and of course, we have some other frameworks we never heard about. For example, I mean, or probably they are not being used any much. But yeah, there are other frameworks
Mhm.
like Solid. They
Yeah.
are really as well in terms of performance. But
Yeah,
when
yeah, definitely.
keeping it
Mhm.
evergreen, like so, remember the cost of choosing a framework is not when you are actually developing something. The actual cost comes after you start maintaining that code.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's something which not many developers understand.
Mhm.
That's why I always recommend that whenever you are adding a new dependency, just think about the cost which you are going to pay it in future. I mean, is
Mhm.
that library will be maintained forever, or like if it's going to be deprecated, if it has enough
Mhm.
number of downloads, or if it has enough number of maintenance and all those things. But frameworks are different thing, right? I mean, this on top of framework, you're actually building your entire business. And Angular is really doing a great job in that,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
if you see,
Mhm.
Angular came, like, of course, I said, like, Angular 4 came in 2017, and Angular 6 onwards, they don't have any breaking changes. And what I
Mhm.
mean change is Angular has a rule that if they are breaking something, of course, as a framework, you have to break something, right? I mean, you cannot just have the same APIs forever. But
Mhm.
Angular has a rule that if they are breaking something, they have to write a schematics. It means they have to write a code to migrate your code to new APIs without breaking your code. And
Mhm. Mhm.
very big point or big win for any enterprise or any company who's building their product on Angular, because they know they are investing in a framework where they have future vision that okay, we are not going to break your code in case we change something. That's our like lookout, right? I mean,
Mhm.
as a framework, we have to adopt to new changes, but we will also make sure that we are not breaking your application. You can easily migrate your code base to the new version,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that's in my point of view is very big
Yeah.
advantage.
Yeah, definitely so. Yeah, I totally agree. It's very good points actually. Yeah, mm, I had some thoughts, like also some funny things. If you remember from the React early versions, like they actually had version 0 going on, and then yeah, it was 0.15, 0.14, and suddenly they, oh yeah, that's gonna be our major version, major updates now. Yeah, I mean, just the technology grows, but it's still, yeah, it has some funny moments over time. The graph here, the chart shows that by the usage, indeed, Angular is now, yeah, at least in the survey, in the State of JS survey, it's a number 2. So it's a lot of people using it. Uh, I think also very Angular, the demonstration of how Angular good in structuring things is the popularity of a Nest.js framework, right? This is a backend framework, but they took a lot from Angular Vault. Like you can see the same structure, the same yeah, components even there, like the model dependency injection. It's also coming from the box and they try to not mimicking, but showing the same approach as Angular does. And I mean, it's logical if it's a successful project like that. And you started talking about breaking changes. That brings me to the point about maybe we talk a little about yeah, big updates, small updates on Angular, like what's coming in the future. If you follow this technology quite well, yeah, maybe you can bring some nice insights for us.
I mean, I'll share my screen and I'll
Absolutely, yeah.
screen this.
Yeah.
So probably you'll be able to see my VS Code now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So first to start with a newer version of Angular, as I said, right? So you have Angular server-side rendering now. So if you create a new Angular application, you will get an option that do you want to enable server-side rendering and static site generation. This is something which is where Angular team is also using now Vite.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a big time that people were concerned about the tooling in Angular. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, of course, Angular was using Webpack, and people were moving away from Webpack. So people were using,
Roll
I
up.
mean, most of the people,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Rollup. I mean, Rollup is something still being used for libraries, but
Mm-hmm.
for front end, I mean, we're moving to Vite or any other tool. I mean, there are so many options, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now Angular team said, okay, they will start using ESBuild. So Angular uses ESBuild as first class tool. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, for building the application,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a Vite support for SSR as well. So
Mm-hmm.
tooling is changing. Of course, that was a big talk, and now that shift is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Angular also have support for your Jest. Remember, right?
Yeah.
For a long time, I mean, people were adopting Jest, but Angular was still stuck with Karma, so they dropped that support now.
Mm-hmm.
Angular does not support, like for new application at least, they don't have support for Karma, but they have support for ESBuild, and there is a new framework
Mm-hmm.
on a new testing framework called Web Test Runner,
Mm-hmm.
which is also coming. I can show you the docs. I think let me.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
I'll show you the roadmap because this is something which probably not many people know that Angular also has a new doc now. So Angular used to have Angular.io as the doc
Mm-hmm.
for Angular. Now they have moved to Angular.dev, which is the new documentation for Angular. And they have a page for roadmap, of course. And you can see everything they have like in their roadmap, which they have worked on and which they are going to work. So for example, you will be able to see, I'll show you few of the things, for example, built-in control flow. If you see there is something
Mm-hmm.
for tooling, right? So you have Angular DevTools is going to improve, and unit testing. This is what I was talking about. So they have experimental just
Mm-hmm.
support, and they have support for web test runners. They are moving from Karma,
Yeah.
and partial hydration is one of the big project where they want to work on. They already have some of them implemented, but partial hydration with SSR, that's something which is the long
Mm-hmm.
term goal. So of course, they want Angular to become the first class SSR framework, which they were
Yeah.
avoiding for a longer period of time. And then, of course, we talked about ES Build and Beat. They are going to actually do it as part of the
Mhm.
framework. So, and then,
Yeah, the SSR, like, is it a sort of going for chasing Next.js kind of projects or Astro or something like that, or Remix? Is that the goal, the idea there?
yeah, I mean, it's something similar to Next.js, right? So, where they have SSR first, but yeah, it's built in the framework. I mean, into the framework. It's not like
Hmm.
you're doing something on top of it. But if you want to explore SSR as of today, I mean,
Hmm.
there is a meta framework called Analog.js, which is created by Brandon Roberts, which is again a good project. Just go ahead and try it out. That works with Vite by default. I mean,
Hmm.
it uses Vite. So,
Hmm.
and then
I see.
I'll talk about loading a lot, bit fu- future, like what to work on the future things. So roadmap is good way to
Hmm.
get the idea like what they have been working on. In case you are an existing developer, if you're a new Angular developer who's coming to Angular, just don't think about roadmap. I mean, it's because most of things will be like, okay, what is this? I mean, it will not make a lot of sense to you. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, in case you are an existing developer and you want to see like what team is has been working on, and good
Hmm.
thing is they also keep giving RFCs. Like they open RFCs and discussions around those. So that's also a good way to get involved into the community as well, right? In case you have some experience, let's say SSR, or if you think that you have experience with tooling like ESBuild or Beat and how they can
Hmm.
adopt into the framework.
I
So you
see.
can also give some of your uh, like of course you can participate in the discussion which happens over the GitHub discussion, or just in case they open RFCs. So generally it works like this: they open internal RFCs, they work on it, and then they open it for community via GitHub
Hmm.
discussion. They do all the discussion and then figure out, okay, what is the best way, or what is the best way for the community, because it may differ, right? I mean, we are all developers. There is something which may be good for us but may not be good for the community, which
Hmm.
actually happened once during the discussion of uh, what was that? Yeah, so there was something which Angular team was working on, which
Hmm.
is introducing built-in workflow, and they ended up doing RFC and they had discussion, and then community was they had different idea, but community wanted something else, and they just changed their entire code
Hmm.
and then adopted what community wanted. I mean, that happens. So in case you really want your voices to be heard
Hmm.
as a thing or as an experienced developer, go ahead and get involved into those discussions on GitHub.
Hmm. Is it
Great.
happening only on GitHub, or they have kind of meetings, steering community meetings where everyone can join or something like that?
That's only happens for internal Angular team, and that happens for GDs, Angular GDs. For
Hmm.
the community, they open the GitHub discussion and then they really discuss about it again. So let's say if there is some things which needs, like for example, as I said, built-in control flow, they
Hmm.
really like took the feedback from the community and worked on it again and discuss it again, that okay, this is the way we want to take it forward. So don't
Hmm.
it doesn't matter like if it's they're just discussing it internally, because at the end, of course, if community says, okay, we want this, not
Hmm.
that way, and probably they have to think about it, right? And until unless they have very solid reason not to do that, right? I mean, there might
Hmm.
be like community want this, but that doesn't fit
Hmm.
into. So in that case, of course, the Angular team really gives you good
Hmm.
insights
Hmm.
why they don't want, they cannot do it. So it's not
Yeah.
like okay, they will tell you, okay, we don't want to do this, but they will tell you with a reason.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, nice. I heard recently about a standalone feature for it was a recent, I guess, change.
Yeah.
Like,
So
mhm.
I'll walk you through a little bit of code.
Yeah.
So this is a new Angular 17 code which I've created. So uh, lot of things have
Hmm.
changed. I mean, So a standalone component, as you mentioned. So Angular actually want to make modules optional. It's not removed. Remember, so modules are not there. So when I'm saying they are becoming optional, I can create an app without creating modules. Okay. So earlier we used to
Mm-hmm.
actually create a component and then we used to create a module and then register this component to make it work. But with
Mm-hmm.
standalone, that's not the case. So you actually just have flag called standalone two, and then you can start working on. Let's create a new, which will give you better understanding. So
Mm-hmm.
let's create a
Mm-hmm.
new component. The laptop is consuming more power, but ng
Mm-hmm.
generate component and let's say this is home component. Just zoom in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a question. What is your take on Next.js? Believe me, I am not a React developer, and but whatever I have heard from the community is always good. But recent changes, I think the talk about RSCs and everything, it's not going very well with the community. So we on this is Tech Talks. We had a discussion with Tejas, who
Mm-hmm.
is a React developer, and we talked about RSC. If you want to go ahead and see that, I think
Mm-hmm.
just go ahead and watch that episode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's come back to Angular. And okay, so I created a new component, right? So and you see, and I don't have a module anymore. So
Yeah.
how to use this? So of course, we have been used to creating modules and using it, right? So just in case, let's say
Yeah.
if I want to use home component in my app.html, the
Yeah.
way it works is, of course, you can the same the existing HTML and as self-closing tags. So you can just actually do this. This was not available for a long time, and now
Yeah.
I'll not use this because this is something which, of course, Angular wants to make sure that the developer experience does not get impacted by all these changes, right? So they have something called Angular
Uh-huh.
language to help you with all these errors. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
see this, it says actually import home component from home component. I mean, they're saying okay, this import is needed to make it work. But I'll show you like how to do it because if you're seeing this, you may get confused. So what we have to do is we have to
Yeah.
import the home component here. So I'll say, okay, this is home slash
Mm-hmm.
home component, your XML file basically, and then just
Yeah.
import the home component and add it to. So now
Mm-hmm.
this has an imports properties. So now your component actually has an imports properties where you can define what are the components or modules which needs to be used by this component. So now as soon as I do
Yeah.
that, it to this, but in future there are going to be changes, right? So this is something which was experimental. I mean, not experimental, but it was a way to make it backward compatible. So let's say if you have an old code base where you're using modules and you want to adopt
Yeah.
standalone, once you of course move to Angular 14 where standalone was introduced, you can do that. So it can work
Mm.
simultaneously or in the same code base. So as I said, right, Angular team does not introduce breaking changes. So, but again, one more thing. In case you want your code to be migrated to standalone, you have a command. So actually, you don't have to write any code. I mean, or
Mhm.
you don't have to like do any manual changes to your code base to adopt standalone.
Mhm.
You can do it increment. So I'll just go ahead and open the docs again because I'll show you something here. So roadmap and in docs they also have all this let's say tools. So standalone and
Yeah.
so you have all this
Is it only
documents
components or services can
related to
also
standalone,
be standalone?
but you also should have sorry
Is
uh,
it? only components can be standalone, or services, filters, whatever else
So
parts can also. Mhm.
directives, pipes, they can be standalone as well. Services are like, of course, they used to be uh, provided in root, right? I mean, they are globally available by default. So if you create a new service, it's actually available in your root scope.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
references, it's available in references. I can probably show you migrations, right? So you can go to angular.dev and go to references and migration, and you'll be able to
Mhm.
see something called standalone. So if you want to
Mhm.
migrate your code, this there is a command. This is really cool thing about
Mhm.
that. Of course, they are implementing new things. They are also helping you to adopt to those new things without writing a code. Who does that, right? I mean, let tell me any other framework doing this. I mean, they're keeping it backward compatible,
Yeah.
but they are also enabling you to move forward without investing much of your time.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
No,
this is
no.
standalone.
Mhm.
And now, of course, you can just go ahead and use standalone components like this, and they have changed a little bit about how they used to bootstrap application. So for bootstrap, they have something called here. So this is your server configuration, site rendering. But if you see main.js, now they have bootstrap application, and then you can just pass component. Earlier, they used to have a module,
Mhm.
which was, of course, then application, so your module used to bootstrap your component. Now you don't need to do all those things.
Mhm.
So you just have a bootstrap application, give your component, give your config. Config is nothing but your routing, and in case you want to provide some services, right? That that's the
Mhm.
only thing which you have to do. But uh, with 50, they have introduced something called standalone APIs, because if we are making the standalone, sorry, components as standalone, of course, what happens to the modules which Angular already has? For example, they have router, they have forms, they were all modules. So to adopt to those changes, now Angular has for router called provide router. For HTTP client, they have uh, provide HTTP client. Yeah, so that's what they call it.
Mhm.
So they're also making sure that okay, they are also internally adopting those changes, not just externally, right? So all the internal APIs are also changing. They are called standalone APIs. So
Mhm.
these are few things. Yeah, in terms of developer experience, which what they are improving. But they also
Mhm.
did something cool, which is we can go back to talks again. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we have been talking about ngIf. So of course, this is something which all AngularJS developers knows as well, right? You know, built-in directives,
Yeah.
ng for, and they were there for a long time. But Angular team said, okay, now let's go ahead and change it. So now they have built in what you can say, they call it as a control flow
Mhm.
for ngIf. So for example, let's say I want to do this, right? So ngIf, let's try to write it in a new syntax which is available. So okay, yeah. So you can actually now use at the rate if. Okay, so you can see if this is true, render
Oh, so
this.
it's less the directive. It's more it's more
Yeah,
declarative. It's less declarative,
yeah,
less than HTML declarative. I see.
yeah. Now it's actually part of the framework itself. It's part of your rendering engine. So you don't have to like write ng if ng for. You can just actually write the rate if, and let's say if I just create a new property, just say
Mhm.
okay, this is here, right? And say okay, this is right here. It was and use I can say if render equals to true, if yeah, so
Mhm.
render, right? So yeah. So that's you can just use if like this, and then they also have for loop. So
Mhm.
you can say for and then uh, write your
Okay.
component here. So let's say if I want to display, I can just do okay for this loop, just introduce this. So you don't have to like add an extra element. Remember like what this
Yeah.
ng if ng
Yeah.
for used to. they used to add an extra element, right, to your or extra
Exactly.
properties to
Yeah.
your and that's not
Hmm.
needed anymore. So it's part of the framework now. So
Hmm.
this is called
That's
basically,
interesting one.
like,
Yeah. Mm.
yeah. And then yeah, it actually removes the need to import something known as common module, which used to be there. But now it's not
Mhm.
needed anymore. So you have this control flow. But the cool part is actually deferred loading. So what you mean
Yeah.
by deferred loading is, which is something I think many React has it called suspense. It's very close to, I think, suspense. I have never used it, but I think one of the library called RX Angular had some of the implementation. So with deferred loading, you can actually lazy load part of your component, or you can actually lazy load a component without need of a router. Before, before this deferred flow came into picture, the only way or only known way to lazy load a
Mhm.
component was actually router. So if you have a component which is being accessed by a router, you can define your those lazy loading lazy loading code, right? And then
Mhm.
once the user interacts with it, it will lazy load. But with deferred loading, actually, we can just do it without need of a router. I can
Mhm.
probably, right. So I can say defer, let's say if render,
Mhm.
and then unrecognized trigger. Yeah, there are multiple ways. I'll just find out the easiest way to do
Uh-huh.
it. Let's go back to the document. Where is,
Mhm.
yeah. So I can search, because for loading, you can actually do it like in multiple ways. So you have, let's say, on you also have based on viewport. So there are so many cool things which can do. So for example, this is the easiest one, right?
Mhm.
So I can just say differ, and I don't
Yeah.
have, I can just put my code here. So I can say, okay, diff. And then
Mhm.
I have a placeholder where I can put an
Yeah.
image as well. I mean, or a default text basically. So I can say placeholder, and in placeholder, I can
Yeah. Yeah.
say, uh, hello.
Yeah. So
So
that will be rendered first, and while you scroll in to this component, it will start loading the app home directive for you, the app home
yeah,
part of the page. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. So in this case, I can, uh, right. But this is not the cool thing. The cool thing is, so let's build it, and I can probably show you the important stuff. So like here, I can say, okay, npm build, and it's going to take a little bit of
Yeah.
time because um, somehow it's consuming a lot of
Yeah.
resources right now. But as it's a small app,
While
it
we're
shouldn't
here,
take some.
yeah, yeah, I always had a question like with ng build, like the asset that you build, it was always much more weighty than the same one for React or Vue.js. Is it something that is already addressed by Angular team, like the build size, how decreased it is comparing to what we've seen before? It was almost up to a megabyte if you use a full stack. Uh, yeah. Is it better now? I think your machine loads is loaded a lot right now. Yeah,
Great question.
yeah. I hope it's not on my side though. And shield.
Okay, sorry. I lost you for a few seconds. I mean, looks like the internet issue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah, now
I
you're
mean,
back, I
I
think.
understood your question.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm back. So yeah, I understood your, but I was able to like hear the conversation a little bit. So your
Mhm.
question was about the bundle, right? When we do build.
Yeah, the size of a bundle. Yeah.
Yeah. So uh, I, actually I was about to talk. I actually show the thing actually. I'm not sure why
Mhm.
that is taking so much time.
Mhm.
Connection lost. Reconnecting. Uh, can you hear me now? Is
Yeah,
it
yeah,
like
yeah. We can
disconnected?
see times interrupting, but I think it's okay. Yeah, like if you speak, we can hear you well. Yeah,
Okay. No, actually, yeah, it's
it's
bad
because
from my.
ng build is working.
Yeah,
and
it's
ng build and es build. Yeah.
uh, finally. Okay, so you see the build, right? I mean, you this is the
Yeah, yeah.
your build. So for a longer period of time, people had question about, oh, your main bundle of Angular is very big. Of course, it was. I mean, if you remember it, around Angular 9, the main build used to be 300 KB, 300 KB for a component, and that was of
Yeah.
course madness, right? So now if you see, the main build is actually smaller than your, if not smaller, but in case if you see this new React build, it's actually not, it's very close to that. Actually, it's now
Mhm.
for a new project, new Angular project, if we exclude your polyfills, it's actually 86 KB,
Mhm.
which is 300 times smaller, right? I mean, three times smaller comparing to what it used to be. And now you also have this lazy loaded chunk, and you see
Mhm.
home component, and it's a
Yeah.
separate chunk because of deferred loading. So in defer block, so if you go back to our code, we said defer this component. So we are deferring this component, but we are also making sure that Angular creates a lazy loaded chunk, so it's not included in your main bundle. So your main bundle is not bloated, right?
Mhm.
So this is like an out of box advantage which you are getting by using deferred block. And believe me, I mean, working in enterprises for a long, long time, I can see so many places where we could have actually used deferred loading and could have made our main bundle much, much smaller. I mean, it's not like we cannot do still, but the only way possible was actually uh, routing. So we have to be really careful, like how you plan your routes or Angular routes, right? But now you
Mhm.
worry about with deferred loading, it becomes easier. And
It's
of course,
awesome.
people
Mhm.
thinking about, oh, Angular has still big bundle size. No, that's not the true.
Mhm.
That's not true anymore. I mean, you have 86 KB, which is very small. Which is, if you compare a React code, I mean, this is probably smaller than React code at some cases.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
there was benchmark shared by Angular team as well. Like not Angular team, but there is actually a separate repository which maintains all these benchmarks for all different features. And there were so many cases where actually Angular was faster than React.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome, Santosh. That's really cool. The deep dive into some of the interesting features and the build questions I had. That's really awesome. Uh, I, I had so many questions actually, but yeah, let's keep it maybe with some limit. Maybe a quick one, but can be also like yeah, interesting. Like, do you follow the web components? The web components overall technology, like Google still has this lit HTML, right? Lit
Yeah.
HTML technology. What is the take and then yeah, the modern take of lit HTML versus Angular? Is these communities do they communicate? Do they contribute to each other's? Like yeah, what is a yeah, what is
I
it
mean,
take?
I
Hmm.
I don't have enough idea about it, but if I remember Lit 2.0, they actually adopted some of the syntax from Angular. And
Hmm.
yeah, that was something they might have done in collaboration or something. But
Hmm.
Angular, if you think about web component support, of course, Angular had component support as well. Angular still has an API by using which you can convert your Angular component to a web component.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they are with standalone also they are trying to make it work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's not a main focus, I would say, for the team, because of course there was some discussion around it, and
Mm-hmm.
that never like moved forward because probably
Mm-hmm.
that might not be an ask by the community. But yes, they do have an API for
Mm-hmm.
this web component, converting your component to web component.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I think Lit is something which is first class framework if you want to adopt
For
web
web
component.
components.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right. Yeah, almost. Yeah, actually, last question from my side, probably. Yeah, because like any stream without mentioning AI would be a waste. So is like, is it something that actually engineers and Angular taken into account or thinking about, or maybe integrating something into the tooling, just anything that is it mentioned even on this technology?
I actually no idea. I mean, I have been to so many discussions, but never there was never a talk about AI. I mean, I was actually asking the team if they can actually make the docs available. Like there is an option in doc which is just like an AI, right? Where you can just type your question and you land on the correct documentation. I think many projects are adopting that. I just asked them if that's possible, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not on the plan. I mean, they have so many things to do. You just saw the roadmap, right? So, and it's not a very big team. They are just 25, 30 people,
Oh,
and not
okay.
everyone is writing code. So,
Mm-hmm.
of course, doing these things just to please some community is, I think, not into the consideration. Yeah. But I mean,
Okay.
we can also talk about a little bit about contribution because that's something which we wanted to
Yeah,
cover. So, in
absolutely.
case
Yeah.
you want to contribute to Angular, I think this is the best time because Angular is moving to a new documentation. So, Angular.dev, this is the new documentation where Angular team is moving towards. And as you know, right, with new projects comes with new issues always, right? That's true. So, you can actually go to Angular GitHub repository, and the best way I would say for anyone to start with is actually documentation because you get comfortable with the code base, you get comfortable with the process. Even if you make a mistake, documentation changes can be easily rolled back, or it can be easily fixed as well, right? So it's a area where you are safe, and you get to try like how to contribute to an open source project as well. So go to Angular repository. You can go to issues and then go to labels and search for good first issue. Probably you'll find some issues which is related to documentation or some small
Mm-hmm.
changes which Angular team is always happy to lend a support in case you want to contribute. If you have any question, feel free to ask. I mean, of course, there will be a delay as which happens with every open source project, right? This is not new. I mean, everyone is busy, so they are trying to help you in your free time, and you are doing the same. You're actually trying to help the framework or the project in your free time. So it's not like you both have some agreement
Mm-hmm.
that you need to deliver in this time. So make sure you ask good question. Make sure like you wait for them to reply. Just don't be a pushy, right? I mean, you okay, just don't keep thinking again again. Yeah, but good first issues, or you can also look for docs. I mean, there are sometimes they mark it as area docs, and then you can choose like there are any open issues. For example, there are three, but always look for the discussion. Probably there is an already NPR or there is someone already working on it. So this is
Mm-hmm.
how you can do it. But Angular has multiple repositories. Angular actually maintains three
Mm-hmm.
different repositories. One is your so this is your framework. They have CLI. So let's say if you have experience with TypeScript, JavaScript, or building tools like using TypeScript, you can go to Angular CLI as well and look for some fixes here. They don't actually mark it as I don't think so. They mark it as good first issue, but you can check the issues and anything which you can do. Yeah, I mean that might be very less. Yeah, there is only one open.
Hmm.
So, so for example,
Yeah.
this, right? So someone added a new issue related to schematics, and which was open in September 12th. Always also make sure that you ask them if this is still open, because it's possible that this is already fixed in some of the code changes they make, because CLIs are generally which is used mostly by community, and then they keep improving the code base. So you can go through the code and see like if there is something which you can help with. Generally, this is also I do. Let's say if I try Angular CLI myself and I land up in some issue, I'd go ahead and try to like log an issue. This is very underrated because people think logging an issue is not a contribution. It is. I mean, if you are logging up good issues, that's a like good feedback for the team as well. And they also get some information that how people are trying to use this tool, which generally it does not happen in open source, right? People are are very scared to share like how they are using the tool or if they made some mistake. But feel free to do that. Good issues are actually good contribution. And then the last one is actually your Angular components, which is nothing but the material component which Angular team maintains. So Angular team has its own UI framework, which is the community as well as enterprises, because most of enterprises I've worked with, they use component or Angular component also offers CDK, which is component development toolkit, right? So they use it a lot. And they have, of course, a lot of issues
Hmm.
here as well. You can go to uh, issues, again, search for like start with good first issue. Or let's say if you get some issues in your own project,
Hmm.
just see if you can fix those, right? I mean, and open a PR here.
Yeah.
So yeah, and feel free to, as I said, Craig, feel free to ask question because Angular team wants to help you as well. And in terms, of course, they are
Hmm.
getting help as well. I'll mention some advantages of contributing to Angular. For example, of course, Angular has a program called Angular Collaborator program. Like you can become
Hmm.
an code collaborator, official collaborator for Angular team, where you are
Yeah.
approving the PRs for them, you are actually triaging the issues for them, you are getting
Hmm.
involved in the meetings they do. For example, if they are planning something new feature, so you get to become part of those meetings, which is
Hmm.
possible if you contribute enough. For example, I can go to Insights and I can show you some of the contributors I know. And here in Contributors tab, you'll be able to see all the people who are actually contributing. And
Hmm.
you have, of course, mostly people from Angular team. But let's say we have some people who are actually not part of Angular team. For example, Matthew. Matthew is actually not working for Angular team, but he is actually a collaborator because he
Hmm.
contributes very often to the team. And yeah, there are a few
Hmm.
more people like who are actually active and contributing to the framework. So you can be one as well in case you're passionate enough and you think you can help Angular team grow or Angular framework grow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Santosh, I'm speechless. Thanks a lot for the demo. Thanks a lot for opening the how to contribute. That is all very cool and very useful information. I think if I would be let's say if I would be interested in starting using Angular, I think contribution is one of the biggest points. Like you start going into the dev and into the source code slowly. You start speaking to the team, understanding the internals. Yeah, that's all priceless, I would say. Um, so yeah, anything to add? Anything you want to add to what has been said?
Uh, Actually, Angular team is also adopting signals. I mean, you might have heard a lot about signals. So this is new way to actually do granular level change direction. I mean, if you remember, Alex, we said bad things about Angular JS change direction. So of course that was, but they're improving it a lot. So they have been working with on signals. They are trying to make uh, RxJS as optional. So RxJS, which was the first class
Yeah,
implementation for all the reactive things inside Angular,
yeah.
they are trying to replace it. they're trying to replace with Signals API, which will be one-to-one API. So you don't
Yeah,
have to worry about your code being migrated, how you will migrate your code basically to Signals. So
yeah.
that's the future. They have been replacing. They have been adding more APIs related to those, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the future. I mean, that's Signals are going to be the future in Angular.
Mm-hmm. I see. Well, Santosh, I think that would be a really good point to finish the stream at this. So thanks again for joining today. Thanks again for uncovering lots of things about Angular. I hope that was interesting for our subscribers and well, at least for me it was. So I hope for everyone it was. So if you like it, please subscribe to Santosh. So please subscribe to our channel as well. And yeah, I think Santosh has a lot of resources there that can help with yeah with getting materials and getting new skills. So just follow Santosh for anything like that. And of course, we will attach any links. So any last point from your side?
Yeah, we are doing this conference as I mentioned in the start, right before we started the stream. So we are doing This is Learning conference, which is the first virtual conference we are doing, and we have open CFP. So in case you want to talk, just ping me. I mean, my Twitter handle is Santosh Yadav Dev, or you can just find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to message me in case you want to get the CFP. We also have registrations open in case you want to just attend the talk, and probably we'll see you there. And Alex, we would love to have a CFP from you as well.
Thanks. I will try my best. Okay. All right. Then have a great Sunday, everyone. Have a great week next week. And I hope that will be a start for XTechnology to be epic back or something like that. So yeah, see you soon.
Yeah. Thanks again, Alex, for having me.